Hi everybody, and welcome to week 6 of Social and Economic Justice 1. I wanted to take a few minutes to congratulate everybody on the hard work that you all did on your written assignments in week 4. Everybody for the most part did a really good job with those. Some of you chose some really big issues to try to tackle in a 4-page paper, but I think everyone really did put forth a lot of effort, and I really enjoyed reading them. I actually learned a lot from them. It's impossible to know everything about every social program and policy out there, so I definitely learned a lot from you that are doing work in fields different from the field that I work in. So that was really interesting for me as well, so thank you for those. Moving forward, so in week 6, I'm going to sort of start out by kind of recapping where we've been over the past 5 weeks. This week we're going to be looking at analyzing policy for at-risk populations. And the written assignment this week is really an opportunity for you to be an advocate and to let your advocacy skills come through in written form. But first I want to sort of retrace where we've been over the last 5 weeks. So we started out by talking about social institutions and values. You remember we talked about civil society, about the family, churches, governmental organizations, all those social institutions that Gilbert and Terrell discussed in the readings in week 1. We talked about issues of social versus personal responsibility. We talked about universal versus residual or targeted programs. We talked about the role of individual values and the social construction of difference and institutionalized discrimination and how that plays out in policy and throughout history. Then we, for the last several weeks, really gave you a giant crash course in the history of social welfare. It's a lot of information to try to jam into 3 or 4 weeks, and what I really wanted you to get out of it was to be able to identify some of the key themes that we keep coming back to. Not so much remembering all the names and dates and places, but really looking at how social problems and how poverty has historically been defined in the United States, who has defined it, and then how this has influenced the response to it. So this week we're going to move into a framework for policy analysis, and you're going to read several chapters in the Gilbert and Terrell book. And you're going to start off by looking at sort of the basis of social allocation. How do we allocate resources? Who defines this? And Gilbert and Terrell sort of talk about a continuum of choices that get made in that process. We're also going to read about social provision and sort of ongoing debate between what are called in-kind benefits versus cash benefits. So, for example, providing someone with direct cash assistance or something such as a welfare payment as opposed to some kind of in-kind service or goods, so as opposed to food or a voucher for housing or something like of that nature. And Gilbert and Terrell are going to talk about 6 provisional categories related to this: opportunities, services, goods, vouchers and tax credits, cash, and power benefits. Then we're going to read about delivery systems. So how do we allocate these resources, whether they're cash or in kind? How do we create systems that deliver these goods and services or programs? What are the choices that are made and how these are designed? What are some different models for delivery systems? And sort of the primary one that we see and that we think of is the nonprofit versus for-profit models. And then in terms of our clients, who gets to access these services? How is eligibility determined? Are these services culturally competent and able to create welcoming environments for everyone? Then we're going to move into looking at how the welfare state is financed, how the funding flows through these service delivery systems from the federal to the state and the local level. And historically in the United States, we've sort of operated under something called American federalism, which is really a combination of national and state control, where the federal government allocates a grant essentially at the state level, and then the state has some control over how that's distributed within the state. So it's not strictly a top-down, the federal government says you have to do X, Y, and Z with this funding. states and sometimes counties also have some say in how those resources are allocated. So the reading this week really is providing you with a framework for advocacy. It's a framework for being able to critique policies from several different angles. And your assignment this week is a policy brief assignment. You'll be writing a policy brief related to one of the policies that you described in your week 5 assignment that hopefully relates to whatever social issue you've been researching throughout the semester. And this to me is probably, I think, if I was taking this class, this would be the most exciting assignment of all the assignments in this class, because it's really a chance for you to advocate for a policy that you believe in, or to critique a policy that you think has issues or problems, and to offer some potential alternative solutions. So this is, as a social worker, this to me is the really exciting part of this class.